the international community, and the member countries of the Organization of American States. We wish to make known first that we exclusively welcome the arrival in our country of His Excellency, Secretary General of the Organization of American States, Mr. Jose Miguel, whom we congratulate for his interest in learning about the historic process that has been underway in our country since March 9th, and for wanting to contribute to the search for a solution to the problem of violence that is ravaging El Salvador. In the depths of the CECOT prison, a figure emerges who stands out among the others. Old Lin, whose voice, laden with years of struggle and defiance, is about to pierce through the walls that contain him. Sitting in the darkness of his cell, Old Lin writes a message. It is not a simple letter. It is a challenge, a proclamation, a message that is addressed directly to the President of El Salvador, Nayib Bukele. What is the message that El Salvador really wants to give? Stay until the end of the video and find out before starting. Leave your registration with a like button and subscribe to our stories. They'll surely catch you. Now, activate the bell so we can begin. On the morning of January 7th, 2003, the front page of the print media proudly announced that the UN had concluded its verification of the peace accords. A symbolic cycle was closing. Peace could keep his graduation certificate in a folder in some New York office. That night, Old Lin, whom the police had already identified as the main leader of Barrio 18 in El Salvador, stopped by Dina, a small popular neighborhood south of San Salvador, to visit the Chinese man, Paiser. The young local palabrero gave him a hug of respect and support. The atmosphere in the area was tense. A few days before, Paiser, whose name was Mariano Alberto Salazar Garcia, had ordered the execution of one of his soldiers, the Kyush, as an exemplary punishment for having lost a weapon. A high price that outraged everyone, apart from the gang, especially Cranky. The cranky talker from the nearby Colonia, IBU, ruled the area. In the gang's ambiguous system of hierarchies and respect, authority spread to neighboring territories, and the IBU chief had warned Paiser, "Don't kill him. The life of an H-boy isn't worth a gun." But Paiser, at 19, felt he had enough character and support to decide what was fair and what wasn't. Right on his own court in his small drug market on the 8th Street, he controlled through the gang's leadership. Lin, his visible face, was visible that night of January 7th at 9:30 a.m. While Lin and Paiser were talking, Cranky, in his eternal place, Lieutenant Duke, entered the Dina and waited for minutes. After Lin left, they approached, called Paiser aside, and they murdered him on 17th Street, shot at with an AK-47 and an M16, weapons of war, to kill an H-boy for having killed another homeboy, and above all, to say something to all the 18-year-olds. The gang can't continue to govern like this. Lin considered it a betrayal. He thought Cranky should have consulted him about such an action. Killing someone he had just hugged was an intolerable breach of trust. Encouraged by Lin, dozens of armed gang members searched for Cranky and Duke in the following days to kill them. They didn't find them, but that night a fight to the death began to clarify the boundaries of the group and to make Cranky understand that the 18th neighborhood had only one yardstick and only one judge. In the mid-1970s in Los Angeles, a man named Blanca approached a Salvadoran boy of about 12 years old who was staring out the window from a restaurant with a spat-out accent as if each syllable were a whiplash. He warned him that he doesn't speak Spanish here, that Spanish isn't spoken. He wanted to say in the mind of that thin, almost agile-looking boy. Those words still resonate. He remembers them with an acid smile when we asked him to explain why he became a gang member. At what age and what place? He tries not to be precise in his answer for the safety of others, but he reveals that contempt for Latinos, the leaden desire to spit back at whoever marginalized him, led him to seek out the gang. He got his first 18th birthday tattoo. He remembers being well off in the United States in the distant 70s. He jumped the clique, the bastards of 18th Street. He stopped calling himself Carlos, and his new brothers beat him to baptize him Lin in El Salvador, more than 3 decades later. No one remembers that X and the Y was changed to a letter here. It's Lin, and on July 2nd, 2011, he turned 49. The height and impenetrability of a shadow varies depending on how the light hits and from where you look. Much of the authority that old Lin had or has in the 18th neighborhood rests on his enigma, where the shadow of his small body, which by being excessive and intangible, ended up becoming mythical and reigning among men who were often strong and always armed. His origins were diffuse, his surprising appearance at the end of 2002 in a gang leadership. The one that few know how he rose there in the gang, who heard that in the 80s he was a civilian who sold drugs to the neighborhood. 18 in the United States, others wonder if he even knows how to speak English, and there are those who doubt if he was in the North End. Lin's past, a gang member. It's an essential part of his long shadow that he belonged to the Revolutionary Party of Central American Workers. That's a truth that he himself made public years ago, but word of mouth from the gang still stretches and bends it, like unwritten laws, making it seem gigantic. They say he was in the guerrilla. They tell you with respect, even the 18-year-olds who hate him, as if in the Farabundo Martí National Liberation Front. FMLN, Lin had learned to be tougher, more fatal. It has nothing to do with ideologies. The same happens with other 18-year-olds who serve in the army. During the war, Civil of El Salvador, having fought in a war, gave them an aura of lost innocence in the gang that the kids, the young gang members, the kids with guns won't reach, no matter how many beheadings, rapes, and tattoos on their faces. The 3 C's that add up to 18. Lin's first prison sentence was, it's ironic, that of a revolutionary. He was 18 years old. He says he was captured in February 1981 in an ambush in a canton of Sonsonate, along with Commander Arlen Wasapacilia Margarita Alfaro, a companion, to whom the PRTC leadership still pays tribute, contrary to what happens with him. Curiously, everyone in the FMLN has forgotten, or almost everyone. After serving time in the Sonsonate prison and the clandestine prisons of the National Police, he ended up in the La Esperanza prison in Mariona, in Sector 1, then reserved for political prisoners. Lin occupied the cell. A 1. Another PRTC activist who shared a sentence with him in those days remembers him with curly, shoulder-length hair, always dressed in a dark black or brown hat and an inseparable green cap with a pin on the visor. He was serious and not fond of jokes. To talk with Mojica was to be willing to argue loudly because he was very serious and had clear ideas, says his former friend. Later, there would be a collective transfer to Sector 2 of the prison, where Link met Jose Antonio Morales, Carbonell, son of the Christian Democratic leader Jose Antonio Morales. Ehrlich, at that time a member of the military junta that governed a country adrift in his prison record, which would grow to obscenity. In the following decades, there is evidence of Carlos Ernesto Mojica's imprisonment for subversive acts and his release by direct order of the Supreme Court of Justice on April 1st, 1982. Lin was probably the first gang member from Barrio 18 who leaned against the walls of Mariona prison. After his time in Mariona, Lin returned to the mountains. He fought at the Guapa volcano and was under the orders of the then Minister of Security, Manuel Melgar. Regarding what happened next, however, Lin is elusive. His former comrade in arms and prison claims that Mojica deserted the PRTC in 1983. He simply says he traveled back to Los Angeles, where in the mid-1980s, he and his reunited comrades from Barrio 18 joyfully welcomed the first graffiti of the Mara Salvatrucha on the walls of neighborhoods inhabited mostly by Central Americans. He, a member of the Eating Street Gang, celebrated the Salvadoran push into the city. However, the deadly enmity that has united the MS-13 and Barrio 18 since 1989, like two perspectives, had not yet emerged. From a mirror, Lin also maintained a closer connection to his homeland than most young people who grew up in Southern California in the 70s and 80s, with a Salvadoran surname and nostalgia, but speaking, thinking, and raging the neighborhood in English. He didn't take root there and return to El Salvador. His shadow fades away until the light from an archive projects it again against the wall of another prison. The Santa Ana prison was arrested on December 29, 1992, and he was released 6 months later, acquitted. He returned to that same prison on October 12th for homicide. By the way, if you're enjoying the video, we invite you to give us your like and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any of our videos. We continue with his latest and most controversial arrest after his release from prison in 2002. Old Lin seemed to want to straighten his path, since he was able to stay away from crime for several years, something that many considered impossible given his reputation. It was expected that in less than a year he would be seen behind bars again, either for killing someone again or for selling illegal merchandise, a task he was indeed engaged in. However, given the contacts he made within the prison, they helped him learn to move more intelligently and calmly, since he tended to be quite explosive in his younger years. So, if someone did something bad to him, it wasn't just a threat but more of the kind, or that he would take the first thing at his disposal and then kill the person who had done such a thing to him. But after the time he spent in prison and the things he experienced inside, they taught him to learn to be more cautious and analytical, because being caught quickly didn't mean he liked being in prison. On the contrary, he defined himself as a nature lover, since he liked the feeling of the breeze through the trees and being able to see the sun set each afternoon and with a new day. He hated every time they sent him to jail because he could only see darkness in every corner. Such was his hatred for the feeling that he swore he would never be in that situation again, no matter what the cost. This was confirmed years later, since, given his award-winning reputation within the Mara gang, his head had a very high price for the police who wanted to find him, so they could weaken the gang. A dangerous gang task that was thought impossible, but with help from both inside and outside the country and some informants within the gang, they managed to locate Old Lin. What they didn't expect was what happened during the transfer of the man. Following what he promised during his trip, the old man began talking to the group of police officers who were guarding him, to the point of offering them more than $10 million each. If they guarded them in that car, it was more than $50 million, a figure that would greatly harm his business. But it was an acceptable price for Lin if, in exchange, he didn't go to jail again. It's doubtful whether he would do it or not. The old man, in a final move, told them about an exact address where he had hidden the money. Doubtful but curious, the police agreed and arrived at the address. What awaited us was that, through the maneuvers of the former leader of the Mara, he managed to escape. He escaped at full speed, but the furious police fired at the van, causing one of the tires to burst and the vehicle to lose control, sending it plummeting down a ravine. At the time, it was thought that Old Lin had died, but as if by a miracle, he was badly injured and had a couple of broken ribs. He managed to survive and head for the deep jungle, where he soon found the house of a farmer who helped him, thinking he had been the victim of an animal. After his wounds healed a few days later, he asked for a phone so he could call his men to come for him. But this was not a message of surrender, but a plea for mercy. Old Lin, with the firmness that characterizes him, calls for change, for a revolution not of arms but of ideas. He seeks to ignite a spark of hope, not only for those who are behind bars, not just with him, but for an entire country. President Bukele begins, Old Man Lin. The peace we so long for is not built through the repression of the desperate, but through the creation of a future where we all have a place. His voice, recorded from the solitude of his cell, resonates with the authority of someone who has seen too much and dreams of a better tomorrow. Old Man Lin's message is clear. True peace requires courage, the courage to change, to invest in the roots of our society in education, opportunity, and justice. His challenge to the president is not a threat, but an invitation to lead this change. At the end of his message, Old Man Lin pauses, a silence laden with meaning. It is a space for us as a nation to reflect on the path we want to follow. The story of El Salvador is still being written, it concludes, and we all have a role in it. And so we come to the end of this video. If you liked it, I invite you to give us a thumbs up, to continue making more videos like this. Also, don't forget to subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss any of our new videos. I wish you a great day. Until next time.